folks, and welcome to What's New in IntelliJ IDEA 2026.2. As always, I'm joined by my lovely colleagues, Marit, Siva, and Anton, who are going to walk you through the feature demos. In case you're interested in a more condensed offering, meaning a 90-second short video about all the new features, you'll also find that here on the channel. As we've got a lot to go through, from AI to Java, Kotlin, and to Docker, let's jump right in. Which means, Anton, what's new in the AI world?
Great. So usually we talk about models or agents. This time we are going to talk about tools for the models and agents. We have come the full circle, and this is something that our users were asking for a long time, to expose the tools from the IDE to make them available to the agents. And this sounds logical, but it's a little bit more complicated, because if you give all the tools from the IDE, the agent might not be able to actually do anything with them, because there's so many.
What is a tool?
A tool is, let's say, an action. Run the build, run the tests, refactor, rename this variable.
Set a breakpoint.
Set a breakpoint, replace text. It can also be like search for some symbol. So all those actions, and there are thousands of them in the IDE, are tools. And we do expose them via MCP endpoint, and we used to expose them all separately. So if you go into the settings, there is a MCP server, tools MCP server, which you can configure for any agent that you have connected to your IDE. And there is a list of exposed tools. So if you go to the list, we have this fancy, solid 90s looking UI with many checkboxes. And one of the new checkboxes that we have here is this router only checkbox, which means that this particular MCP tool will be hidden behind a single entry point, so that the context is not polluted with the tool descriptions, because the context for the LLM is the single most precious resource. And and if we expose all the tools, right, there is a lot of descriptions, they eat up the context, and usually you don't need all the tools. You need a portion of tools depending on the task, maybe debugging something, maybe writing tests, maybe investigating some problems or anything. So they usually are grouped, and the universal entry point is this execute tool that is also an MCP tool, and we need to teach the agents how to use those tools. So the tools are there, they are exposed from the IDE. Now we need to tell the agents how to use them, and usually we do that using the agent skills. So if you go into AI Assistant configuration, there is a skills tab where we can configure the skills, or basically pull them in. There is a default repository or registry, which is github.com/jetbrains/skills. I usually disable it because there's too many agent skills definitions, and they are not all of them are relevant to me. Of course, I can use the search, but the list is just too long, and I have my own custom skills for spec-driven workflow, for some specific things. So I can usually configure that, or I also find some useful agent skills on the web, so I can add those repositories into this configuration. And once I have that, I have a list from where to install. So some things are already pre-bundled for you, like this IntelliJ Debugger skill. We're going to have a very nice demo by Marit just in a moment. And there is a list of available skills that I can pull from my own repository. Now, if I click that one, I can choose to install it either globally for all the agents, or only for that project, or only for the specific agent. Maybe I have tuned it. I have not seen anyone tuning for the specific agent, but it's probably possible. Yeah, so that's an important part. And that's about tooling. So we have tools. We need to teach the agents how to use those tools. For that, we use the skills manager and the skills register and agent skills. The last update that we did recently, a few weeks ago, there was an announcement of GitHub Copilot team partnering with us on improving the integration for the copilots, and we have a blog about that as well. So previously, the GitHub Copilot was available through ACP registry, but now it's bundled, so you can use your GitHub account to activate it and just use it without having the subscription for JetBrains AI. Yeah, that's it about.
Cool. And just to mention, essentially our end goal is with these tools, providing them the tools and the skills to make agents at the end of the day work faster, better, more deterministic, higher quality, right?
This is what we are experimenting with. And for us, it's more like a go to be a platform to integrate the agents. We have ACP, agents integrate via ACP, and we expose our tools, our intelligence about the code, any other tasks that we can think of that are useful. And the team is working on experimenting, testing, evaluating how efficient they are. And for the users, the benefit is that the agents would get faster and they consume cheaper, less spending is always
more
better.
deterministic in some aspects as well, because it uses existing tools, so agents can have nice tools too.
Yeah, and agents can have nice tools too.
And quality
Yes.
of the code.
Yeah. Great. By the way, for you viewers out there, let us know how you work with skills. If you have like a company-wide repository for skills or project-wide skills or any other favorite skills you're using in your full stack development, for example, let us know in the comments down below. All right, so that means we're going to hop on to good old Java support. Marit, what's new?
So, as you might know, our release falls squarely in between the Java releases. So Java 26 was released in March and Java 27 will be released in September. So obviously we will support Java 27 from day one, but there won't be a lot of language changes. So in the meantime, we've shown this before, you can download Java 27 from inside IntelliJ IDEA, and also the Valhalla early access based on Java 27 if you want to try that out. But if you are using SDKman, like some of us are, right? Then you might be using a SDKman RC file. And if you remember, you can also download the JDK from there. And as of 2026.2, that works also if you don't have SDKman installed, which means that you can now use...
Even on Windows?
Exactly. So you can also use this on Windows if your project has an SDKman RC file and you don't have that particular version of Java. In this example, I have the 27 Valhalla. You can download that from the SDKman RC file, even if you don't have SDKman installed.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Because to install it, you have to go to command line, and maybe you are not command line person.
Exactly.
But then you have this descriptor in the project, and your colleagues can just download stuff.
Yes. I mean, someone would have to add this file. So if someone on the team does have SDKman installed, they can use SDK and init to create this SDKman RC file. And then everyone who uses the project can use that to download the right version of the JDK. However, in this example, we did another improvement for Java support, one that I really like. In this project, I'm using Java 26, which is currently the latest version. Now, in my regular terminal, my default version of Java is still Java 25, which is the latest LTS. But in this project, I have Java 26. And what I want to show you is that that is now also propagated to my terminal automatically from my project settings. So if I open my terminal, and that is both for my regular terminal and for my agent. So if I ask Claude for Java version, I'm sure there's a way to select that. If I ask Claude for Java version, it has Java 26. This means I no longer have to fight my agent on what Java version I'm using.
Very annoying when you
Yes.
switch between the IDE and the terminal.
Yes, and it would fight me on that version is not out yet. Let me upgrade to, you know, an older version. So now you no longer have to fight your agent on what Java version you're using. The terminal will automatically inherit that from your project settings. And also, if you're working on the terminal, it will also have the same Java version from your project settings. So I think that's super cool and helpful also with agents.
It really is. Thank you, Marit.
You're welcome.
Well, then we're going to have a look at Java's, is it correct to say close cousin, Kotlin? I'm not sure, but we're going to have a look at Kotlin. What's new there, Anton?
Yeah, let's take a look at Kotlin. Kotlin had 2.4 release meanwhile, actually in May, if I'm correct. And there are a few language features that the community was waiting for, the stable context parameters and the explicit backing fields. I will not dive deep into the language features themselves, but we did some improvements in the IDE to start using those features. And let me go into the IDE and show you the example. It will be very basic, just to understand what the feature actually means. So context parameters first. Context parameters are kind of annotations or requirements that we can add to the functions. So I have a function that is called context function, or some function. I could call it some function maybe, just for the example and to make the distinction, some function. And it's annotated with this special syntax where I declare that this function requires a context object or a context variable or a context parameter. We can use different names here, that will be called, let's say, C, and it will have a type interface, object, any class or anything. So some function needs to have a context object of type iContext, and that's an interface, and I can supply any instances or any implementations of that interface as context objects. And in the use site where I start using this function, let's say I'm just about to call this some function and give it an argument, because it requires a context object when it's invoked, you can see the IDE actually highlights it as an error. So the code does not compile. It actually forces you to provide this context object in order to invoke the function. That's an interesting constraint, and we have a special action to surround or to provide the context object for this function, because currently I have the instance of that context object declared in the scope. So the IDE will automatically surround the function call with this special context function. So it looks like a block of code where this function is invoked. When you look at this feature, it might be unclear why.
Tell us.
Why? But this is a functional way of implementing dependency injection. So this context object is a dependency. In this example, there is a more elegant and slightly more complicated example where the context objects are used. That's for DSLs. This is the bread and butter for Kotlin, I think, and I have an example here as well. So I have a DSL implemented. I'm not going to dive into how it's implemented here, but you can see this nice structured code that looks like JSON almost, and it builds an instance of a client, and the client has a first name, last name, some other attributes like Twitter handle, maybe TikTok account, and so on. But they do also have a birth date usually, and in this DSL that I have created for myself, it's a demo code. I have a date of birth field that I will declare as 24th of March, maybe 1990. And this code does not seem to compile. What's going on? Because currently March is an extension function on an integer. So it's an extension function on an integer, and it's also an infix function. It looks cool, reads cool, but we don't want to pollute a global scope. So integer is a global type. We don't want to this new extension function to be available on any number. I want it to be available on the number only if I'm building the client. So only where it makes sense. And as you can see, the compiler is yelling at me. So why? Because I have declared this function with the requirement that it needs to happen within the context, the date context. The context is this block of code, and I need to declare that this block of code contains this context. And I can do that by declaring this date context for the block of code in the declaration, in the signature for this function, for the parameter of this function. And then the compiler is satisfied for the invocation right here when we declare the date of birth. But then it also yells at me that I don't have this context inside this builder function that invokes this block of code. And of course, I'm in control of this code, and I'm going to provide this date context myself. Like, need to fix this code a little bit. Yeah. So why is this important? Because extension functions can appear on global types, and we want to control the scope of them. And I don't want my users to read the documentation about DSL. I want the tooling to help my users to use my DSL and prevent from stupid mistakes, like using functions that don't exist, that are not supposed to be used from outside of the context, and so on. So it's like me, the author of the library, the author of the ESL can control and can guide the user with the help of the compiler and the IDE tooling as well. But this is a complicated thing. So if you look at the simple example, it feels why? But if you go into more complicated example, then you suddenly understand that, well, this is a great feature to control the scope of those fancy features in Kotlin. Yeah, that's the main thing that the community was waiting for, especially the Android developers, because there's a lot of DSL in Android development. And the other feature that we added is about explicit backing fields. So in Kotlin, it's a very common pattern that you want to expose something as non-readable variable or a collection or anything like that. But internally inside the class, you do want to add some elements there, depending on the logic. And the pattern was that people would declare some private variable as mutable list, for instance, and expose it via immutable list. And inside the getter for this property, they would return that mutable instance, so that outside of the class you see it as immutable something, but internally it is mutable. And this requires declaring two fields, and it's annoying like for people, and it seems like it is a pattern, and the team was working on simplifying that. So as soon as the IDE recognizes this kind of pattern, we have this inspection to hit Alt Enter and convert it into one single field with the new syntax. which reads well, I would say. You just have to know how to read it. That the 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 property itself
I mean,
is immutable, but internally it will be mutable field. So, but yeah, it's just a language feature. But inside the IDE, we have those new actions to convert to the new syntax and back to the old pattern. Yeah.
Thank you, Anton. Then on from language features to a feature which I'm pretty hyped about. It's called Logpoints or Printline Debugger, and Marit is going to show us all about it.
Yes, it is super cool. So imagine you're a developer in a web shop, as you are, and you have this order service and order processor. And obviously you test your features before you push them to production, right? So let's add some load on our service. And then when we go to the run window, we see that orders are being processed and some of them are failing. So we need to figure out why they're failing. But if we go to the debug window, we don't have any information on what's going on. So we need more information. One way to do that would be to add system out print lines or log statements, but that means then we have to change our code, redeploy our code. We might end up with a different runtime state. I love a good Heisenbug, don't you?
Yep, we all do.
Yeah, no, really don't. So what we can do instead now is that we can add a log point, and there we can put an expression, request, and that's an editor, so we have code completion here, and then as I'm typing that, you can see that it's showing up, and it's now logging lines from this log point. So, you know, sometimes naming things is hard, sometimes we get it right. This will generate additional logging so that we can figure out what's going on. Another upside of using log points is that obviously in your libraries, we go to where this method is called. In our libraries, obviously, we can't use system out print lines or add log lines, but we can use log points there. So here again, we can add a log point, and let me just yell that this is the body. And then we will see that showing up in our log, and then that can help us get more information about what's going on. And then if we see something interesting in our log, let me look for example, we have some orders with quantity 0. That can't be right. We can actually, if we click it, we get the hint that we can, on Mac, command click it, and then we go to the place where that log line is created, so that we can then continue our investigation from there. In our case, because it's a demo, I know why it's failing, because it has quantity 0, so I also know where to fix that. But usually the hardest part, or one of the hardest parts of debugging, is knowing where to put the breakpoints in the first place. So as Anton showed, we have a debugger skill. So let me try that. We can use the IntelliJ debugger skill, and then let me paste the description so that I don't have to type. So we can actually ask the debugger to help with our debugging. It's going to hopefully find the tools. Sometimes it finds them immediately, sometimes it doesn't. Or rather, for me, it usually doesn't find them. And then one of my colleagues says, oh, for me, it always finds them. So I'm like, okay, fine, we'll ship your machine then, I guess. But, you know, it's going to eventually find the MCP IDEA execute tool. So one of the tools that we've seen. But I've already, of course, done this. So let's find a previous chat where I've done this. So it will use the tools, and it will actually, it notices that there's a debug session already running. So it might not do the same thing every time. So this is just what it did some of the time.
Depending on the state of the project, right?
The state of the, well, you know, it's AI, it's non-deterministic. That's what makes
it. The position of the stars in the
stars,
sky.
the moon, the color of your socks, whether Mercury is in retrograde, I don't know. It found the HTTP file of the orders that we were firing on the service. And then at some point it has a theory of what's going on, and then it starts actually validating that theory and collecting information, curling stuff. Thanks, Daniel, for curl. And then eventually, so here we can actually see that it put a breakpoint, and you can interact with the debugger, so you can also watch as it's debugging and see what's going on. But eventually it will find the root cause. In this case, it found it's failing because quantity is 0. It collected all of the data, etc. So yeah, it's really useful in the debugging. It provides you all of the information of what it did and the steps that it took to get there. Usually I think it will also clean up the breakpoints again, but if not, you can set them and then run the debugger yourself and run the scenario through the debugger if you want to verify yourself. But yeah, that can really help, I think, with debugging stuff if you don't even know where to start.
It looks very much like the human would debug the application. First, find where it is, put all the sprint line statements, and see, oh, okay, the first one, the second one appeared in the log, and the third one did not. So it seems like something in between is broken.
Yep.
And then start investigating.
I mean, logging, I reached here 1, I reached here 2, so those lines.
Yeah, but now you don't have to do the print lines anymore. You can just do the log points. So I made it here, I made it here, I made it here. Or you can use the skill, and that will maybe get there faster without having to do all of those. So I think that can be super useful.
It can be, and that's a call for feedback. We've been working on this for quite a while. Please do try it out. Logpoint and the skill, and let us know your experiences with it. Down in the comments below, just send us an email, uTrack ticket if there is a bug. We appreciate all the feedback.
Yes, thanks.
Then let's talk a bit about frameworks, more specifically about Spring and Flyway. What's new there, Siva?
So we continue improving the Spring Boot support, and we have added some pretty cool features in Spring Debugger. So let's say you are building a REST API and you are using Spring Security to secure the API endpoints. And now let's imagine you want to debug some functionality that is already secured. And usually the way you go about it is like you find the credentials and then you invoke a login endpoint and you get the token and then you pass it. So most of the times by the you do all these things, you forget why you started doing all these things. So now you don't have to do all these things. Instead, you can start the application in debug mode. And here right away you can see the security inlays, like which endpoint is secured by what kind of a role you need to invoke that particular endpoint. Here, as you can see, these endpoints are secured by admin role, and this can be invoked by anybody anonymous user. And also if you take a look at the other post controller here, this can be invoked by any authenticated users. So immediately the inlays convey that what kind of a role is able to invoke this API endpoint, but that is just one thing. The coolest thing is now you can simply unlock and then invoke this API endpoint. You don't have to actually log in with credentials. So let's say this API endpoint is to fetch all the users, which only admin can do it. So now you don't want to do all this, you just want to invoke this, maybe you want to do some debugging and all that. So now you can simply unlock this, and here you can see the lock icon is open, and let's say we go to HTTP client, and here also you can see the inlays information where it shows you can invoke this API endpoint. Now simply call it and you get the information. So as simple as that.
That's super helpful.
Yeah. And here in this case, we are not storing any authenticated user information, so we don't need to specify which user is actually invoking this. But consider what if we are trying to create a new resource, like creating a new post. In this case, we want to store the user ID who is actually creating this new post. So in this case, we might want to specify which specific user we want to simulate. So here we have another option where I can say, hey, this is the username, and I want to log in as an admin, or whichever role you want to use. And you can say you unlock that API endpoint, and you set what are the credentials that you are going to use. Now you can invoke that API endpoint without actually providing this authentication token or anything. So you can just invoke this and you can see that is stored correctly. So this is going to be really helpful if you want to debug and you don't want to go through all the security filters and everything. This is really nice, and as you can see, this is nicely integrated between your Java code and also your HTTP client. Right away you can either you can unlock from the controller endpoints or you can directly unlock from the HTTP client itself.
And that's also a shout out to our HTTP client. Yeah?
Yes.
That it's so nicely integrated with all
Yep.
these technologies.
Yes. In addition to getting the auto completion and everything, you can also see the security endpoints and how to unlock and all those things. Again, you can navigate to the security configuration. Let's say you split your security configuration into multiple components. Then you can click and then navigate to where this security is configured. That's another cool feature. So this is one new feature that we added to Spring Debugger plugin. And another interesting feature that is added in this release is Flyway DB migrations. So as you can see, I have started the application, and here I already have two Flyway migration scripts, and you can see these little green check marks which represents these two migrations are already applied in the database. Let's imagine I want to invoke, I want to create another migration. So I already have one migration one, and I move it to migrations folder. Now you can see this doesn't have that green check, which means it is not yet applied. Now one way is usually you restart the application and then it will be applied. And we have added a specific option to invoke that Flyway migrate, so that you don't have to restart just to apply the migrations. You can simply invoke this, and here you can see in the log it already applied, and also you can see here the green check mark is applied to this third migration as well. So if you ever want to apply the migrations, you don't have to actually restart the application and all that. You can simply use this functionality to just do the Flyway migrate. And in addition to that, you also have options to specify what is the DB connection and where all these migration paths you want to take, because this is a Spring Boot application and the default one is inside the class path DB migration. But if you store in multiple locations, you can pass all that information as well. So this comes very handy. But another very interesting feature is, let's say we are adding one more Flyway migration, and let's imagine we want to apply this. So let's go ahead and
just one more migration.
Just one more migration. So I'm trying to apply this. As you can see, this got failed, and here you can see the red icon which says this migration is failed to apply. And here we have just 3 insert statements, which is easy to find. But imagine you have 100 or 200 lines of migration, and your console simply says that this migration failed. It doesn't say where it got failed and which specific statement it is getting error and all that. Now IntelliJ shows you exactly which statement got failed with a error icon. So it is very easy to see, okay, this migration got failed, and you can immediately navigate to which location, and it also provides you some information that which kind of error you are getting. So if you ever find yourself debugging this Flyway migration errors, you would definitely appreciate this help. So these are the two features. And then one of the complaints, I mean, there are many issues regarding, hey, I am using configuration properties in my Spring Boot application, and I often navigate between properties file and then where it is being used. So I want to have some smooth navigation support. And earlier there were many bugs around it, and in this release, many of those bugs were fixed, and also the navigation support is greatly improved. Let's take a look at what kind of improvements we have. So here, if I go to application.properties, I have all the application specific properties here, and I have a configuration properties bean that are bind all these values into. Now, if I click on this green Spring icon, I can see where this property is being used. Like, as you can see here, I have it in default application properties file, and I have it in local profile specific properties, and then I am also using this in a specific test, overriding some default value with something else. So like that you can navigate between the properties and where it is being used. So it gives you, imagine if you are working on a very big Spring Boot application where the properties are used all over the place, and sometimes using command shift and then trying to find matching the keys, not very pleasant. So here I would say this is really nice to navigate and then find where it is being used. And not only the functionality internally in the implementation itself, there is a good improvement of performance. As you can see in this graph, this is how it used to be in the internally, how much time it used to take the parse all that and then map into the elements and all that. Now in this release, the internal implementation is improved quite a bit, and you can see the time it take and is drastically reduced, and it is much more faster now.
Nice. Very, very nice. Thank you, Siva. Which brings us back to, well, build tools. Gradle and Maven. Marit, what do we have?
We have some pretty cool stuff, actually. If you're working with Gradle and you're using the Kotlin build files, then you know that it's a Kotlin file, which means that it will actually have a code completion for Kotlin, which isn't necessarily very useful for your build script. So what we've done is we've cleaned that up for at least the dependencies block, because that's the part of the build script that you're probably most often editing by adding dependencies or updating dependencies. So now if you have completion inside the dependencies block, it will show you only the relevant things for your dependencies block. So like the scopes, like implementation, so we can add dependencies there. It also supports the version catalog, so we can use stuff from our version catalog if we want to add dependencies. And then we can navigate to the version catalog as well. But not only that, it also has, we have dependency completion. So that means that if we want to add new dependencies, let's say H2 database, it will actually find those dependencies. And as you can see here, many of them have a little cute cloud icon, meaning they are fetched from our server. So it's going to actually look for those dependencies. And then we have one that has the home icon, which is actually coming from my local cache. So before it would only find stuff from your local cache. Now we have a server where it will find stuff that is on Maven Central, essentially, so that you can import the latest version of your dependency. And you can actually invoke search on a part of that, and then it will give you everything with the same coordinates. So you could look for newer versions or different versions if you want. But not only that, we don't even have to use our implementation scope, etc. We can also look for a dependency right away, like JUnit Jupyter, and it will add the right scope and the latest version. So if we want to add JUnit, it will add JUnit 6.1 with the right test implementation scope. And that part, obviously, for the Maven users also works in Maven. So in Maven previously we had only the completion for the local cache. But now if we add, let's look for the same H2 database, you see that shows up, and if I select that also, it will auto-complete that to a dependency. In this case it's a duplicate because I already have the H2 database in this POM, but just to show that it works there as well. So I think that's really cool to get the completion and make it easier to get the latest dependency, so autocomplete the latest
It's
version
nice-
of the dependency.
It's nice that I don't have to think about the syntax, how to declare the
Exactly,
dependency.
like, especially for Gradle.
I just know the name
exactly
of the dependency. And
so one thing to know is that it will actually search the server when you have typed enough characters for it to search for something useful, and then if you continue typing, it will search from the list that it's already fetched. And if you want to like force another fetch, as it says here in the hint, press for Mac, it's Control Space. That will force another completion, and that will fetch then stuff from the server again. So if you're not finding the thing that you're looking for because it already fetched based on fewer characters, force another fetch and see if you can find what you're looking for. So I think that's super useful for making it easier to work with build scripts. But wait, there's more. Before you interrupt me, Marco. As you might also know, Gradle might have some breaking changes in every version. And currently, if you're then importing a project with broken build scripts, or you're upgrading your Gradle and now your build script is broken, or maybe your agent wrote something based on older Gradle versions and now your build script is broken, previously IntelliJ cannot sync your project, so also it can't load the projects, and we are collaborating with Gradle, which is cool. Sometimes the Gradle folks show up at the office, so we can collaborate on stuff. So from the upcoming Gradle 9.7 and onwards, we will make sure that you can actually sync the project also when the build script is broken. So to show that, let me update the Gradle version. And because this is a project with 3 different projects, I have to do that 3 times quickly. So we'll update to the custom Gradle build that we have, just to demo that this is going to work. And then when we sync the Gradle project, we can see that it's going. I love this part about demos, when you have to wait for stuff to happen and fill the time. But as you can...
You're doing great.
Thanks. Any stories you want to share with us in the meantime? So as you can see, now we get like the green check marks. I love green check marks, left over from my days as a test engineer. So that means that it did actually sync the project, and now that means that we can also see the project in the Gradle tool window. We can get some syntax highlighting in the build files already. Another thing that we have is you can now, no, I don't want to import it. I want to jump down to the code, so we can navigate from the build script to the Gradle code, and that will actually navigate to the right version of Gradle, so that you can see what has changed in the API and that you can fix your build script. And then another thing that we're going to work on is for Gradle 10 and upcoming, of course, there might be breaking changes. So we're going to work on having some quick fixes to make it easier to then fix your build script and get everything working. So either when you're upgrading to a newer Gradle version, or if your agent generates a script that doesn't work, that should be easier to work with.
So currently what we see on your screen is that it partially imported, and you can see the project structure, even though the script is not compatible with the new version.
With the current version. So it will, at least IntelliJ is able to somewhat sync the project and understand the project. So we can see this project has 3 projects in there, so we can see them in the Gradle tool window. We can also see the tasks and things that we couldn't see previously.
So the errors there are intended.
It's
not that it's broken.
It's not, well,
it's not broken.
It's a different state of broken. The script is still broken, but at least now it's showing us where it's broken, so that we can more easily fix it.
50 shades of broken.
50 shades of broken, like a different set of broken.
So it's not as broken as before. It's still broken, but it should be easier to, now you can at least sync the project and find out what's broken so that you can fix it, and we'll add quick fixes to help that. And one thing that I forgot about the dependency completion. just to wrap that up, that's the one I'm most excited about. Because we now have this server with the latest versions and everything so that we can offer you this completion, we're also looking at what else we can do with that information, such as warn you when there is a new version so that you can update. We already have the package checker that will tell you if your dependency has a known vulnerability. So that we already have, but of course there's more that we can do with this dependency information on the server, like maybe also expose it to agents so that they know what the latest version is. And wouldn't it be nice if you don't have to fight your agent on what the latest version of a particular dependency is, so that doesn't helpfully upgrade to the previous version. So
Cool.
yeah, lots of cool stuff.
Thanks, Marit.
You're
And by the way, as always, let us know if you're Team Maven or Team Gradle or maybe even Team Basil down below in the comments.
SVT?
SPT also. What about
ANT.
ANT, yeah.
Sorry, Anton, what year is it?
Especially if you're using ANT, let us know down in the comments below. Right, then last but not least, Docker, Anton.
Docker, this is the kind of updates I like the most, when we add a single small little feature and it suddenly makes a difference. In the previous release, if you haven't seen that, you should. We had an update for Kubernetes, the inlay hints in Kubernetes descriptors, and we are continuing, the team is continuing to improve on the same kind of features, but now for Docker. And one first little feature that I want to show is when you want to start deploying something to the Docker file and you are not fancy if using agents to generate them, maybe you want to craft them. Let me demonstrate that. So Docker Compose.
Handcrafted artisanal Docker files?
Yes, handcrafted files. So let's say I create a new one and it's empty and there's just services label, like the block is there, but nothing inside. There is a helpful little hint, basically helping you to overcome this blank or white canvas block, what to type. And if you click that, it brings up a list of a fixed list of templates that you can configure in your Docker Compose file for different databases, queues, basically different resources. Or you can simply start typing. If you know that you are going to use MySQL, start typing MySQL, it's gonna populate that template for you immediately, and then obviously you can edit that further. That's just a simple,
That's super handy.
very straightforward, nothing super smart about this one. So there is no like smart logic behind or anything. It's just a live template, kinda.
But completing some YAML is always a good idea. I mean, we've probably all thought a YAML file on some white space that wasn't there or should have been there.
So sometimes just this kind of small things make a difference. But the other thing that I'm even more excited about is when you start integrating different things together. So the runtime information with what you see in the editor and so on. This is exactly what we did in the previous update for Kubernetes, and now we did this same thing for Docker Compose. So when we look at the Docker Compose file with a few services that I have already started, I can see some inlay hints that I can hover over, and I can see that the service is running. So there's a running label, and if I click that one, it actually navigates to the services window, to that pod or like the container, and showing it's healthy. I can inspect the logs and I can navigate back. So for instance, if I close this file in the editor, I worked for a while, I maybe inspected some code, I navigated through my project, and I'm looking at the services window, and I want to figure out where the web server is declared. I can jump to source and I jump to the definition of that web service. Obviously, the running label is not the only possible one. Your container might not start. Something is broken. There, I have an emulation of that failure. So the service starts with an error, and there is a failed label rendered next to it. So if I click that one, I will see in the log that, okay, there are some errors, and it just helps me to diagnose what's going on. And even more useful stuff, my application is currently running, the service I deployed with Docker Compose. And when we can detect that the ports are forwarded somehow, let's say I have a web application, obviously with a web UI, and I want to access it, then there is a little button rendered next to the port forwarding block to open it in a browser. If I click that one, it takes me to the UI of my application that is running. And we can do the same for the databases. So there is a Postgres database that is running inside the container, and port forwarding is done. And if I click that button, then it takes me to the database source. Obviously, it's currently pre-configured for me already because I did that before. But if I didn't have it configured, then it would pop up with the configuration screen populated with all the connection details, password, user, database, and so on. And then I could configure the data source for my application right here, all automatically. So just a few little things added, and it already makes the things better.
Yeah, very powerful. Right, and that's already a wrap. You've now seen all the new, highlighted features in IntelliJ IDEA 2026.2. As Marit earlier said, wait, there's more. You'll find the entire list of all the new features in our blog post. But for now, please download the new version. And as we've told you before, we crave your feedback. Let us know what you think. Try out Logpoints, try out all the other different things that you just saw, and let us know any good or bad things about them. Thank you all for presenting today. Thank you all for watching out there. And we'll all see you soon in the next What's New stream. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.